So, you know, you see like these ex-colonies and how like, you know, right, Morning guys. So I'm feeling a bit ill again today. I just got a bad stomach, I don't know. I think it's just where I've eaten some food and it set it off a bit again, so I'm going to just stick to basic foods. I'm basically exploring around Dalat today. It's a very French looking mountain town. It's very pretty from what I've seen, so I'm going to walk around, see a bit of the hustle and bustle. Maybe try and find some things for odds and ends, see if I can buy some odds and ends here and stuff. Walking around, I thought I'd go through some of the basics of what to know when you're travelling, you know, the travelling basic package. I haven't gone over it a lot, and I know there's a few people out there that could do with some new information. I'm also going to go over quite a lot of stuff when I get back to UK for a month, not permanently, just going back for Christmas for a month. I'm going to have some spare days, so I'm going to go through some odds and ends there. It's a pretty little place here. So I'm going to go through the basics and just give you an idea of some of the essential things which some people worry about or don't know, just in general. And one of the first things is like how do I book all my accommodation? Really, I use one or two websites. There's a bunch of other ones, but the two I use, the main one's hostelworld.com. It can be sometimes a little bit more expensive. I find it more reliable than the other one, which is booking.com. Hostelworld.com doesn't have as many hostels, but I feel that's for a reason. There's a couple of times I've booked through booking.com and it's been a really difficult place to find, or the reviews aren't as accurate as they should be. To give you an example, back in China when I was in Chengdu, I booked one through booking.com and it took me 3 hours. I was at the place, it took me 3 hours to find where it actually was, and I was only walking around a block. The one bonus about booking.com is you do not have a deposit you have to pay. I think it's something like 10%. You know, you usually have to pay that, and if you do miss it, you lose it. Or if you cancel a day or whatever, you lose that. But it's not so bad when you're paying like 50p. That's a simple one, you know, simply it. You just go on there, search your location, make sure you put the right dates in. You know, sometimes it's easy to put the wrong dates in, the wrong month. If you're booking it in a month's time, make sure you're not on the present month, make sure you're next month's. Another one is flights, and this is one where a lot of people do overpay a lot. I use mostly a website called Momondo, but there's also another one called Flight Scanner. There's not much difference between the two. I just prefer the layout of Momondo, find it a lot more appealing, easier to use. So a couple of pounds here and there is not always that bad, but I just double check both and see what price they're both averaging. But with these two sites, what it is it gives you a big influx of many different sort of flights, and you can get some really shitty flights through this website. Also, you get some very good deals. Obviously, double check your layovers, and I do advise not to book flights with layovers with opposite airlines, because you have no guarantee that they will reimburse you a new flight to go from that airport. If you have two airlines, they don't care about each other. So if you fly, for example, with China Southern Airlines to some random remote place, say you fly to Russia, and then you go with British Airlines from Russia to England, if the China Southern Airlines is 3 hours late and your layover's 2 hours, then you're screwed. You're going to have to buy a new flight from Russia. Just go with one airline, book one with a decent layover, don't go for one with more than like I'd say no more than 8 hours if you can help it. Honestly, it's painful. Unless it's during the day, it's not the end of the world. But if it's an overnight one, I mean, if you're arriving after midnight, it's very painful sitting in an airport tired. You don't really want to sleep because you have all your electronics on you usually. And you have your expensive stuff on you, you have your passport on you. So you never can actually have a comfortable sleep. That's my advice on that, personal preference. But it's quite good, it usually knocks off a good price. I got £500 for a return flight to UK just around Christmas. Booked a month before I'm going. I think that's pretty good. As you can see, I'm walking around in a park talking about this. It's a bit too loud on the main road. But the next one, and quite an essential one, and one I even worried about a little bit, was how to get your money while abroad. Because I honestly 100% do not advise you to bring all of your money in your wallet, you know, and then change it. 2 reasons. One, you can just lose it all and then you're fucked. Second reason though is you usually get ripped off for currency exchanges. You get a better exchange rate doing it for an ATM than you do doing it through an exchange most of the time. There's one problem with this, is that sometimes, especially in China, is that the bank servers can be down for a day or 2, international bank servers. So when I arrived at Beijing airport, I couldn't withdraw any money, and you'd think, oh, you're screwed. But what I do advise is, and this wasn't even through my own advice, my dad told me to do this when I left. He said, bring about £250, $300 whatever it is, the currency is, just bring a good amount which you can survive off for about a week, and just keep it there, don't use it, and exchange some of it up if you need to. So it's pretty simple. You literally go to an ATM, make sure, you know, it's actually, I think you get a better exchange rate if you just do cash withdrawal. If you start asking for an exchange rate, I think it actually can charge you more if you try and like withdraw it in your own currency and then get the exchange into their currency. So I think it's actually better just to know how much you want and then just withdraw it. So just check the exchange rates before you leave, have an idea. I mean, I got here and totally forgot what the exchange rate was, withdrew $1 million dong, and it turned out to be £33, which is about $50 US. So, which is nothing. I would advise, which I totally forgot to do, is to get a second bank debit account. That way, if you do lose your first one, and keep these in separate places, if you do lose your first one, keep your other one in like your other bag, wherever you're not going to bring it out on a daily basis. If one or the other gets lost, you still have another one which you can transfer your money to, and you're fine. Yeah, when you want to navigate a city, it can be some of the most difficult things you can do, because you can arrive, you have no idea where you are, and to navigate from somewhere where you don't know where you are to somewhere where you don't know where it is can be extremely pain in the fucking arse. And the worst I had this was in China, because my GPS never really worked properly on my phone, because I never really had service providers. So my GPS was never completely accurate. I could be thinking I was going somewhere else, but it was somewhere completely different. I most of the time for China use outline maps. Few of Google Maps, the outline, you know, when you like go offline, you still have the remnants of your Google Maps left, purely because the internet was bad for a certain app which I use the rest of the time, which is called Maps.me, which is a great app. Honestly, like, it has all the hostels pretty much offline. You know, you can pretty much use it completely offline and be fine. Navigate very well. It usually knows exactly where you are, tells you where to go, gives you good routes, and all of these websites I told you will be linked below. But Maps.me has been great, but the one issue is you do have to download the places before you go, for obvious reasons. But places like China, you have to download separate regions, which I found a big pain in the arse, especially with bad internet and my memory. I'd constantly get to places and totally forget of downloading it and get there and be like shit. So I sort of gave up in China, but like Vietnam, I downloaded the whole country. Cambodia, I think you can, and even if you have downloaded a few regions, with a decent internet, it takes maybe like 10-15 minutes. But it really has been helpful. I've not struggled at all navigating Vietnam with it. And this is a good one, it's travel insurance. Because I did fuck up on this one. And with travel insurance, this is probably the most important one. I did fuck up in a sense, but not completely. I just went with one which had a really bullshit policy in it, because I'm going back to the UK for a month. It says I can only go back home for no more than 2 weeks without my insurance being void. But I went with something called Outbacker, which was great in one way, but there's a lot of small print. and I thought I was saving money, but looking through it, if I had to make a claim on some things, it may even be void. So I really do advise to look in the small print. And in some ways, as much as it's really shit, I've realised why a lot of people recommend World Nomads, and that's who I'm going to go with when I come back. And it's expensive, and be prepared for it to be expensive, because it is. But looking through the small print on that, I can see why everyone recommends it. It's not like a phone contract where you might lose £10 if you lose your phone, or you might have to just buy a new phone. This is to the point where if you get airlifted, you're going to be like even up to £1 million out of pocket for a fucking some extreme evacuation thing, just because you wanted to save £30 on a policy. And I really know what it's like trying to budget for a trip, and I know what it's like having £100 less in your bank account for your trip just because you paid for some policy you probably won't use. But it really is something important, and I really advise you not to go against your insurance. If you know you're going to be doing things like deep scuba diving or skydiving or skiing and you know it's not covered, don't think, oh, that's for £50 more or $70 more, I might as well just not pay for it, I'll be fine. The reason why these insurances, as much as they're a fucking con, and I really believe they're a con, the reason why they charge you more for these things is because you're more likely to be hurt, and you're also very easily found out if you've been going against your policy. The mentality that you can lie against your insurance really is far and beyond possible. I mean, in places like Vietnam, if you break your leg when you're drunk, you can just tell the person to write saying you're sober, walk around, fell down the stairs. But doing things like skiing, you're in the middle of the Alps and you're in the middle of a cliff and you're bleeding out of your fucking leg, it's going to be pretty obvious what you're doing, and the insurance will just say no. So I really do advise with travel insurance to not go against it, to get a good policy, and also, and a really, really big one with insurance, is very few insurance policies will cover you if you take your insurance out while you're abroad. And some of them won't cover you if you've been out of the UK for more than 6 months of the year, or whatever country you're from. I'm going to carry on, I'm going to have a little bit of a walk around now. I feel like I've covered the good basics of it, and I've emphasised enough about travel insurance without being too boring, hopefully. So I'll chat to you in a minute. There's not a ton I'm doing today. I feel a bit bummed that I'm missing out on the waterfall, but I really am not feeling great. So I'll chat to you guys in a minute. So let's get a bit more views of this town. It's quite a nice little town, to be fair. So I'll chat to you in a sec. These three guys on bikes with BMXs on the back of their bikes, which is quite funny. But no, what I was saying was, if you wonder why this looks French, it's because Vietnam was once occupied by France, so there's a lot of French influence here. It's the most I've seen, I think, so far. Like, you got like towers which are just behind me, which look like the Eiffel Tower, and there's a bunch of these around, which is really interesting. They're not obviously a full representation of one, but it's just a really pretty area. It's really interesting. It's a big mixture of Vietnamese and like French influence, and that's one thing I found very interesting. It's the first time I've gone to like ex-colonies, so you know, you see like these ex-colonies and how like you see like these ex-colonies. I will finish this video eventually. You see like these ex-colonies and stuff, which are just fascinating to see, and you see that influence. If you've ever been to France, you'll see it, like the silly water fountains with fucking bushes on them and stuff. Just taking a stroll back to the hostel, so I'll chat to you guys in a little bit.